Hey everyone, this is your OG, and this is another Godforge video. Today we'll be providing another weekly podcast speed recap to give you all the news in half the time. This week we have Dirk, Tom, and Todd from the animation department on with Chosen to discuss polishing the game and making it look incredible. Without further ado, let's optimize. All right.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Fateless podcast episode. Joining me from the Fateless team, we've got Dirk, and then first time appearing here on the channel, we've got Todd and Tom. How we doing today, fellas? I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do.
All right, so we are going to bump the playback speed for you to 2, and we'll go full screen. Oh, we were full screen, sorry. And we will talk and share a speed recap of what went on in the podcast this week. Okay, so Todd is the animation director here. He grew up and he grew his mustache in Kansas. Loved video games, went to school for 3D animation. Oblivion Remastered is his last game. He says he has a young newborn son, like 8 months old, so it's made gaming a little bit harder, but he did just recently restart Valheim, which Chosen mentions he had beaten a number of times, and so those are some of his intro and games that he's interested in, or he's been a part of, or he's liked. Then we get to Tom. Tom is a senior animator working with Todd. And, sorry, we have a couple ads here in the middle. Tom is a senior animator working with Todd, and we'll show you. There he is. This is Tom. Tom started in film and TV back in 1994 on Space Jam and also on a Canadian show he mentions. But then he had a friend who was in gaming, and he moved via the art department into gaming and also wound up moving to Texas, where he is now. He animates all of the characters' abilities in the game, and he says he's a real tabletop kind of gamer. He plays Scrabble every day with his wife. He likes board games. He likes board war games, and he's quite the OG. He says he likes sort of an old school, just playing across from another person. So cool. So that is Tom. And then, of course, we had Dirk on as well. Dirk talks about sequencing or syncing the timelines with the animations. So he's working to, he said, I started kind of the animation department kind of before it all got pulled together. He said that he thinks they've been crushing it and working through the fixes really well. He said it was probably like the least organized area before Todd and Tom arrived, but it has jumped up in terms of speed to complete work and the reduction of back and forth work, meaning there's really good expectations of the inputs and outputs of all their processes, and Dirk mentions that. They also mention motion capture rig that's in play and how there's some unique animations for each character or each hero because of that, but that they can't do that necessarily for everybody in the alpha, but they will go back and continue to do that over time. Said that the one challenge with motion capture rigs are it only lets you do what you can do, right? Like if you, it's kind of like think of some of the initial videos they showed where they were doing axe strikes and things for the announce trailer. That was motion capture rig. And so you can't necessarily fly or jump 10 feet or do anything that you personally can't do without wires and a whole bunch of other setup. So he said he uses the animations to heighten that reality and go above even what mocap can do. He said during the shipped version of the game and the global launch, he expects a lot of things are going to look a lot better than they do in alpha because the polishing just can continue to go on indefinitely. But right now, they have to really prioritize and focus what to work on for the alpha so that that testing can give the best results back to the dev team and the design teams. Okay, they talk about adding faces and expressions, including yells, but he said it's been a little tricky because some of the mouths haven't been skinned, so when they come through or they open, it doesn't look right yet. He said, but that will definitely be good to go for the global go live or like global launch. So we'll look for those close-ups on heroes' faces, and Dirk says, yeah, that's probably best during like their ultimate when he's setting up the camera angles and the sequencing of the champions doing their abilities. So that's really cool to hear. He talks about, gives the good example of Hercules' core ability where he throws his hammer up and shouts and then grabs it and like slams down on the enemy. He says that's like a really cool example of just those faces and expressions and all of that level of detail being added to it. But of course, they always say too, like we've got to balance the work it takes to do that level of quality versus, you know, how much time we have left. So Tom asks Dirk if he has gotten to Loki's ultimate attack, because apparently he winks and then he teleports and winds up on the backside or the other side possibly of the enemies or something like that. Dirk said he is working on it right now. He didn't get it finished last night, but like he's working on it. And he's sure that for some of the bigger bosses, there'll be some clipping issues and the things they'll have to work on. But this gets into a point that they make that nothing in the alpha is super polished. There's a few pieces that are polished, but like not much of the alpha is really super polished. He said the focus is on, does it play well? You know, so we always have to hold that in our minds, that duality of like, okay, we're in the game, but we're not in the game. You know, this is alpha, and alpha is one thing, and global launch is a separate thing in terms of level of quality, in terms of how much time they have to get there. And we have to remember that alpha isn't an MVP or a minimum viable product, but with that philosophy, they don't want to add detail or polish or work unless it absolutely needs to be there for the gameplay experience to test that core game loop. That's the most important piece of this alpha testing, not... I mean, obviously the aesthetic is powerful and is an important part of the game, but I think they know their aesthetic will be on point when they ship for the global launch, but it's really about how does the game function and work, and does that work the way we hope it will? And so we will keep that in mind. Your OG will be sharing all the levels in the alpha testing, and we'll keep reminding you of this. Sometimes, like, hey, we're looking at like the framework. We're not looking at the finished, painted, beautiful wall. Okay, so we're not going to get hung up on those details. We'll obviously help Fateless in terms of identifying any areas where there are aesthetic, you know, or clipping issues, but that's not their focus, so it's not going to be our focus either as we try to help them with this alpha testing portion. Okay, we're going to take a quick pause and jump off to promote a little something. So on the channel, you see this post. Hey everyone, just announcing the details of OG's Art of Winning series that will be a 10-part introductory course taking you through all the basics of the Godforge game world in an engaging and impactful way. Gives you a quick idea. Volume 1, learning the core pillars, factions and rarities, stats, kits, and combat, buff me up, debuffs double damage, disables and unique devices, gear sets, weapons and where to farm them, stat thresholds, and then boss, mini-boss breakdowns. Now, each volume comes with a Sun Tzu Art of War quote to set you off in the right thinking. So some examples: he will win who prepared himself, waiting to take the enemy unprepared. For buffs, to secure ourselves against defeat lies in our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself. So some interesting stuff. Look for these videos to start rolling out once we've had a chance to start playtesting and confirmed all of the aspects of the game that we're going to be showing you in this 10-part series. But this is going to be absolutely invaluable for you to get started in Godforge with the most amount of knowledge and make as many right decisions as possible so you can max out your account. All right, so that is a quick jump off there. All right, Dirk mentions that like 2x speed does cover up some of the animation cleanups because they'll happen so quickly. He mentions a like going to stab and the character flips their wrist when they do it. He said a lot of times at 2x speed you almost can't even see it. And then they talk about what is the comparing to past projects. But before we do that, what are some expectations for the alpha build? We want to show you what they are saying is the bar for animations in the game. They didn't show it. I'm going to show it to you because we have Mordred and Heimdall's animations. So we are going to jump off on this and show you that. We're going to pull it back real quick. We see Mordred's skills. Okay, so Mordred is a disruptor, so he's a debuffer and disabler. Okay, and we're going to see his 3 skills. We're going to see his basic right here. Very good fencing form there. I like how the step in, step back looks very natural. He has a little dip as he steps in and steps back. I think that's extremely natural. Very nice. Yeah, very, very nice there. Looks very natural. So this is his core ability. He's gathering up all this force, and then boom, he just flings it. Now, what I want to show you here is look at the detail. How he steps back like this, really, like this is something they added. That makes it look like he really threw something of force, you know, of mass, of like, really makes it look like he threw something, you know, powerful. So it's going to be interesting to see what debuffs or what disables Mordred's kit has, because he's not a damage dealer, even though these look cool and like, bam! It's more about, he's probably going to be more about landing his debuffs and disables, but really neat to see just how, and this is his ultimate, he gathers it up, does like a spin move there, almost like a discus thrower, hits the B button, spins, unleashes his ultimate, and then his return back looks really smooth. His return back looks, I'll show it again here, looks really smooth in how he's coming back to start. So he gains it up, does all this, B button, boom, and then he steps back real smooth. So awesome to see that. He's definitely not a damage dealer, but really cool to see how smooth they've worked out these transitions and these returns to start pose. Last but not least, what you guys are waiting for, he's going to show Heimdall's ultimate here. So obviously looks to put up a massive AoE shield for the team. It's called Stay Frosty. Boom. So now it looks like his ultimate, Heimdall's ultimate, probably just puts up a massive shield. Maybe you don't take any damage through this shield. Of course, we know he's tied for the highest defense and has the highest resistance in the game. This would allow Pandora to continue to run and Odin to continue to put debuffs on the team and to cause damage. So really cool to see Heimdall's ultimate. All right, so that was just a quick jump off to let us talk about what they're saying is the bar for quality level that they expect to hit on every character, every hero, every champion when we get to global launch. What they're saying is right now, you'll see some of the champions hit that bar, and other champions are using more placeholder items that are almost a year old now. And as they work through those characters, more and more of them will be above that bar. And ultimately, I would expect all 200 starter champions at global launch, if they do make it to that amount, will all probably be at that level. So that is just a visual representation of the level they say that the game should all be at. We'll just skip past this ad and move forward. Okay, so the last part in this, he talks about how does Godforge compare, Chosen asks, how does Godforge compare kind of like scope-wise to other projects you've worked on? Tom says he's been on a Hero Collector before. Fateless, he says, is one of the most organized studios he's ever worked for or worked with, and he's shocked just seeing how it works as they are a completely remote team. Todd mentions the amount of heroes that they're looking at is extremely ambitious, but it's totally doable when looking at their roadmap. The polish level, he says, is higher than other games he's seen, and work is clearly well scoped. There's good project management framework. So like Dirk says, games he's seen have been launching like less and less champions, almost like 40 to 50, and he says they're still shooting for over 200 at launch. Okay, so from your OG's perspective as a project management professional, one small but crucial task is going back and updating your strategic roadmap based on evolving time durations for your tasks. This is easier if you have your company's processes mapped. I like to use Lucid to do that. you can see big picture how long your hero creation process is, start to finish, all the inputs, all the outputs, and where it can be optimized and where risk lies. For instance, they have their hero pipeline built, and we can hear and see that it is functioning pretty well by the quality of the product we see time and again. But Dirk mentions that he feels the velocity or the tempo the team has been improving, which makes sense because as you run over a process more, you optimize it and you lose the extra time that comes with getting oriented and making sure you have all the necessary inputs to produce that high product. As a team makes decisions, it's important to run those through your strategic roadmap to see if it will push timelines. Because while you are cutting time out of your processes, you're also making decisions based on quality that tend to add time back to your processes. And that happens just as they dial in exactly what they need to produce. And this is, and as Simon has mentioned this, the level of quality they're going to accept is always going to continue to keep rising. They're going to want more out of themselves. So that's happening naturally. So they are trying to produce an ever higher level of end product. Simon has also mentioned how small changes produce a ripple of work or rework through all that they've already done and through all the heroes in the game at that time. Capturing what time increase possibilities exist and having each manager or however the company is structured monitoring how long, even just rough estimates of 15-minute increments of how long their processes take to complete at the correct level of quality is vital to start shaving ever smaller gains off as you reach a more optimized or a nearly optimized state. Last project management pro note here, crashing your schedule is a common term used in project management, and it means that you find ways to run your processes in parallel rather than simply linearly. In Fateless's case, they would want to look for choke points in their process and duplicate that section of the process involved to the point where the flow is returned to a more natural level. It's about queue management and process improvement at a strategic level and can allow for timelines to be reduced or the amount of delivered product at launch to be increased in terms of value over your current projections. Okay. Back on topic, I would have asked Chosen, how does it feel, having explored the lore and building these kits, how does it feel for you seeing the VX and the sort of as the champion reaches the end of this telephone game, does it ever feel disconnected, or is the process providing all of those necessary inputs and guidance to each step along the way so that those themes that Chosen is looking at in the very beginning are maintained throughout all of character development? Well, ironically enough, they get into this topic. Dirk mentions that Sham has a really sharp eye and that animation has the level and the detail to really match the kind of perfectionism that he has and they have in these timelines. He doesn't want a sword floating in the air for even a frame or someone sliding back for even a frame. So he says that's his and Sham's level of perfectionism, and he's really excited that animation has been able to provide the level of detail to match that. I think Tom made the point. He says, this is fun to work on, so it leads to a little bit higher quality. And in turn, that means and he says because it's a turn-based game and not a game where you need to have this instant response, because it's turn-based, it's there's a showcase. It's there's a stage, so the animations really just can be showcased and really done right. And that goes hand in hand with the perfectionism that Dirk is talking about in terms of the timelines and responsiveness to, I press the button, my champion does what I want it to do, and it feels satisfying. It feels impactful when they do. They mentioned the research into the lore. Both Tom and Todd both mentioned researching the lore and helping to, understand what Chosen has built and the team has refined. Tom mentions starting with Guan Yu, and with him, he had all custom animations, custom idol, everything. He said they can't really do that for everybody in the game, but sorry, Tom says that they can't do that for everybody, but Todd says that they will try to circle back and do that for nearly everybody, at least for maybe their ultimates and stuff, as things go forward. And but he said right now it's about making sure that design sets things up, that the animations work to help, with the testing that's coming up. But yeah, I think that's an interesting thing for Chosen to have looked at, is like how the character makes it to the end of this pipeline and what it looks like and what made it, what was highlighted, what wasn't. Really tells you a lot about that process and where it could be optimized in terms of the information flows, like what information needs to be provided, and to who and at what points. I've seen a lot of the storyboarding and things. It looks like Fateless is all over that, but certainly helps to continue to refine. They then get to what is your favorite hero VX, okay? And Tom mentions Pangu's ultimate, which we just showed his core ability, I think yesterday, and he says he really enjoys his ultimate. He thinks that one looks really cool, so we'll look forward to that. He worked on Guan Yu's beard stroke there, his idol breaker, and he said, they do plan to go back, like I said, and refine and upgrade and polish all the animations, with whether through mocap animation movements or just really taking detailed looks at every single piece of every animation for every character. But with the alpha looming, priorities had to be made, and they had to focus on things that were most prevalent to the testing. All right, so we are going to be helping to, as we get into this work, we're going to be helping to introduce all of the new factions. Like I mentioned, we're going to be showing that 10-part series. And in season 2, or volume 2, or in volume 2 is actually all about factions and rarities. And they're talking about, that's what it was. They're talking about here about trying to remember which champions go to which faction. That's what it was. I'm sorry, I forgot the point at what they were talking to, but they had a little trouble remembering, okay, which champions are in which factions. Specifically, of course, Japanese versus Chinese is a little bit tricky, and also Viraj versus Ecker can be a little tricky as well. So we will be putting out, like I said, volume 2 will be called Factions and Rarities, and we'll provide you some helpful ways of remembering the difference in which champs are in which, as well as looking at the 5 rarity levels: legendary, epic, rare, uncommon, and common, and what are average stats for each level, each rarity, and what are some key champions, key heroes you're going to want to be looking to get on your team. Then Chosen asks, okay, Tom mentioned Pangu. Todd, what is a champion or a hero that stood out to you so far? And he says Sphinx. He says Sphinx was the most surprising to him. He says there's a lot of great ones in there, but he thought Sphinx was really interesting. We haven't seen more than just Sphinx's stats yet, so we haven't seen a kit, but that looks, every one of the legendary heroes from Aru has looked incredible, so he would go perfectly in line with that. He also mentions Icarus being a really unique champion. And then they mentioned Fafnir, the dragon boss, and how he has this really cool hovering dragon fire bath, which maybe actually could be similar to the way that Quetzalcoatl does a hovering effect and then puts buffs on the team. Maybe it's the same animation redone, but Fafnir apparently goes up, hovers, and bathes everybody in dragon fire in his animation. They talked about how his scale went from like 1.7 times the size of other heroes to like 3 times the other size of heroes, and how they had to work and rework things to fit and accommodate that change. We also hear that he is in a cave, and he flies. So Fafnir is a boss that we will be seeing in the game. Not sure if we'll see him in alpha or if we have to wait for the global launch to see him, but very interesting leaks there regarding Fafnir and a boss in the game. The second boss they mention is the Golden Guardian, and Dirk mentions working on the Golden Guardian and asking if there had been any change to that champion, or that boss, I should say, because apparently something happened with the skinning of the champion to where the middle fingers, it was the boss, the Golden Guardian boss was basically flipping everyone off when you came up to him for the fight. So that's funny. It certainly wasn't an intentional thing that they wanted to do, but something that came through awkwardly with the skinning. But they did make that change, and it is fixed. So you will no longer get flipped off by the Golden Guardian. But this is also a second boss that we got to hear about as well. All right. Well, that pretty much wraps us up. We are going to sign off. This is your weekly podcast speed recap. We will drop the full-length podcast in the comments below if you want to hear the full rundown. But if you enjoyed this speed recap, hit like, subscribe, and look for each Thursday's Fateless podcast speed recap going forward. Thanks for hanging with us until the end. Take care of yourself, and remember, play smarter.